may be a new series that I'm going to be starting on this channel. But I've talked about in the past that there are various different gods within the Riordanverse that I have issues with their presentation. And there are a few I'm going to be getting to, but today, just as I've gotten through to Aphrodite and Ares, I'm going to be talking about another god that I am frustrated by their presentation. And in this case, that's Artemis, but also the Hunters. So let's explore why Artemis in the Riordanverse is just not it. Now, Artemis is probably it's just in general a really fascinating goddess to me in Greek mythology. She is one who is obviously a maiden goddess, and a maiden goddess by choice, and was given that choice, and just like Hestia was allowed to be a maiden goddess, and anything that went against that, the person who tried to make sure she wasn't a maiden was punished, usually by Artemis herself. But in the Riordanverse, Artemis and her hunters. Now the hunters, not really in mythology in general, it's very much a Rick kind of creation. They're kind of there in mythology. There's lots of maidens who swear themselves to Artemis and kind of follow her around, and that's kind of it. But they don't really join her on hunts. They're just kind of like her handmaidens in a little bit. But in Rick's world, they are actual hunters. They follow Artemis, they hunt, mythical beings, they're immortal, all this sort of fun stuff. The issue that comes within the Riordanverse presentation of Artemis and her hunters is that they are young girls who hate men. Maybe hate isn't the right word, but it feels in that way. The way in which it's presented of this automatic, open hostility towards male characters in particular, but also female characters that are ones who have romantic interest openly towards men, or are just interested or invested. So basically their hatred of the Aphrodite children. Not even in relation to men, just if you like love, they hate you. And I have a real issue with that, because in the relation to the hating men situation, Artemis doesn't hate men. Never has, never will. In mythology, Artemis is a character who, yes, she has cursed men before, but only when they have invaded her privacy. The cases in which that she has turned men into animals to be attacked by their own animals or cursed them in some way is when they have tried to, in a sense, besmirch her honour. Oftentimes the cases where it happened was that they stumbled upon her bathing and didn't leave and just kind of openly gawked, and she was like, bro, that's not cool, death to you. And that's what gods do in general, not really exactly a hatred of men. Add in, she has had 2, if not 3, I don't know why I did this, she's had 2, sometimes 3, depending on which mythologies and whether or not this is an accurate one, male hunters. The main ones being Hippolytus, who was a man who basically turned his back on love and was more interested in swearing fealty to Artemis and joining her on her hunts. He was killed by Aphrodite because of the fact that he wasn't interested in love. We'll get to that. Well, no, we won't. I've done a video about Aphrodite, so you can go check that out. But anyway, nothing related to Artemis. She accepted him into her group, basically. She accepted his fealty, and I was like, yeah, no, you're cool, bro. And yeah, not talked about this in the series whatsoever. The one that is talked about is Orion, but through the lens of something that is part of one kind of the myth, but also kind of not. So in Heroes of Olympus, Orion comes into the story, and he hates Artemis because I don't even fully remember why. It was something like she rejected him, or her brother had him killed because he thought Artemis was falling in love with him, even though she was a maid. Men causing problems. And that led to some issues. But even still, he was a male hunter, even if he ended up getting kicked out, because based on one version, he started to enjoy killing too much and caused more issues. And they were like, hey, we don't kill for sport, we kill to hunt. That's all. And he wasn't doing that. And then obviously the other one of like, Apollo being like, hey, you're getting too close to my sister. Zap. Either way, not really in relation to anything that is of hating men. But even still, the fact that he's brought into it, and as far as I'm aware, not even mentioned to have been technically a male hunter, and the fact that he now hunts hunters because of this whole situation is, a problem in and of itself. But their introduction to the series, both Artemis and the Hunters, introduces them as an all-female group who are hostile towards male characters for reasons unknown. Zoe Nightshade, at least in some case, has a justification due to Heracles being a dick. Even still, it's every hunter. Every hunter has an open, hostile relationship towards men and towards women who are into romance. And there is no real reason, mythology-wise, as to why that would be a thing. And it's just something that I really fully do not understand why Rick thought this was the best decision. Yes, they are a group that is predominantly it's meant to be a sort of like women's shelter. I guess it's not the best analogy, but the Hunters of Artemis and Artemis herself was a sanctuary for women to kind of help keep them safe in some way. It doesn't always work because, Zeus, and Poseidon, and just male gods, and male humans in some cases as well. But it was meant to be a sanctuary. It wasn't like they were against men, because they did have interactions in the case of Artemis with men. It just meant that you still had to be a virgin. It was a virginal group. And in the romance-hating side of it, also doesn't make sense, considering that Artemis was also a god of childbirth. Like, she guided women through childbirth, which means she's not anti-love, romance and marriage and all these sort of things, because, childbirth is tied to one of those things more often than not. So the open hostility towards men, towards romance, towards women who like romance, there's just no in-universe or in-mythology explanation for this choice within the narrative. And considering the only other all-female group, which is the Amazons, have a very similar, very questionable visual representation within the story of them having male slaves, it gives this implication that all female groups are all anti-men. Unless you're the special case, in the case of Percy, where there's this whole line of like, Percy seems to be different because, of course, main protagonist, plot armor sort of situation. But I've just never understood it, because mythology-wise, there's no reason behind it. And story-wise, there's no logic behind it. Yeah, they could maybe hate demigods because maybe there's been conflicts in the past. I'm pretty sure there are probably mythology stories of demigods causing issues for Artemis and Artemis's maidens. I don't remember anyway, but there could have been a situation there where you could even write one into it, where like the hunters and the campers have just had conflict because, the hunters are immortal to an extent, unless they get killed in combat, but like they're immortal. And the demigods, they're consistently always dying. They have an average life expectancy of like 22 at Camp Half-Blood or something like that. But like, they don't do that. There is a huge focus on the Hunters of Artemis and Artemis of them being an anti-men group. I just don't understand it. It just felt odd, like an odd choice to have, a strong female group for some reason being hostile towards men, when all it is in a sense like a women's protection group, sort of, or a safe sanctuary for women. It's a choice that I've never understood. It's a choice that I'm not particularly comfortable with, and it's something I do hope they change slightly in the adaptation, because it's something that feels very late 2000s female group story-esque. So I figured out what I meant, and what I basically mean is that the Hunters of Artemis kind of feel like that stereotypical image
of what people think feminists are actually like when they're not. But the Hunters have just ended up perpetuating that anyway. So hopefully that makes sense.
But it's just something that it just never sat right with me, considering Artemis's story, considering the fact that the Hunters are, you know, an original creation from Rick that could have been used to amplify this idea of a sanctuary for women within a sort of half immortal group that are protected by Artemis, a maiden goddess. But I don't know, admittedly, I'm also confused as to why they're always prepubescent children, basically, when, like, Artemis is also a protector of mothers, or at least childbirth in some way. So, you know, where are your 20-year-olds? Some 20-year-olds are probably invested in wanting to become a hunter. I'm 20, I would love to be a hunter, but I don't know. I'm going slightly off tangent now, so yeah, it's just, there is issues there with how Artemis is presented as a character that just never sat right with me. I don't know if that's the case for anyone else, so I would love to hear your thoughts on what you thought of the presentation of Artemis as a character. So let me know in the comment section down below, as well as what are the gods that you feel kind of didn't get the best of breaks in the Riordanverse, or the best presentation that you would like me to cover next in this series. So let me know, and thank you all so much for tuning into this video. I really do appreciate it. I know much of it was basically a ramble, and it's because this is a subject I always ramble on, so, you know, my bad. But it's happened now, so hopefully you enjoyed it. As always, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already. Drop a thumbs up, check out my merchandise store, all that good stuff. And again, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.